Ryan thought paying cash for a car saved him money. It didn't. That one sentence, "I'm paying cash," may have cost him over $8,000 before the negotiation even started. Not because cash is always bad, because dealerships don't make money from one number. They make money from layers. Ryan didn't see any of those layers when he walked into the dealership. He saw a price. He saw a car. He saw a decision he had already made months earlier. He had spent years building just over $30,000. He skipped trips, delayed upgrades, and chose smaller expenses over larger ones. Every one of those decisions reinforced the same belief: avoid debt, avoid interest, stay in control. By the time he arrived, he wasn't comparing strategies. He was executing one. So when the salesperson asked how he planned to pay, Ryan answered immediately, cash, expecting that answer to shift leverage in his favor. In most transactions it would, but in this one it didn't. The reason it didn't is not obvious unless you understand how the system behind the deal actually works. That's where it breaks. Because that one word didn't change the car. It didn't change the sticker price. But it changed how the dealership built the deal around him. It told them how many profit layers were about to disappear. It told them how much flexibility they had left to work with. A cash buyer collapses the structure into a single margin. A financed buyer expands it into a system. And systems can be adjusted. That same week, Sophia walked into the same dealership, looking at the same car, with the same $30,000 available. She could have paid in full without hesitation. But when she was asked how she planned to pay, she said she was open to financing. That answer didn't commit her to anything. It kept her inside the system long enough to see it. It kept multiple layers alive. It kept options on the table. And that difference is small in the moment, but it compounds across the entire deal. Same car, different outcome. Ryan focused on the only number that felt real at the time: the price on the windshield. The car was listed at $31,800. He negotiated it down to $29,900. A clean $1,900 reduction. That number is visible. It feels earned. It confirms the strategy. Most buyers stop here because this is the number they came to change. Once it moves, the job feels done. Ryan stopped here too. But what he didn't notice was how quickly the dealership accepted the reduction. There was no real resistance. There was no escalation. There was no moment where the deal felt like it might break. That should have been a signal. It wasn't, because Ryan was negotiating inside the only layer he had left. The dealership was not protecting the price. They were protecting the total. And this is what you never see. Behind the price is the front-end margin, the spread between what the dealership paid for the vehicle and what the buyer pays. On most cars, this margin sits somewhere between 3 and 8%, depending on the model and the inventory pressure. That means on a $30,000 vehicle, there is roughly $900 to $2,400 available before any negotiation begins. Ryan pushed this down. He reduced it. That felt like control. But the dealership allowed that reduction because they already knew something Ryan didn't. This was the only layer they were going to get from him. Once that is clear, the price becomes flexible. Behind that sits dealer holdback, a percentage of the vehicle price paid back to the dealership by the manufacturer after the sale is completed. It is typically around 2 to 3%. On a $30,000 car, that is another $600 to $900 that never appears in the negotiation. It never appears on the paperwork. Because it sits outside the visible deal, it does not move when the price moves. That means even when Ryan believes he pushed the deal to its limit, the dealership still has built-in profit that he cannot see or influence. That's the real profit. Same system, more layers, more profit, and you're still looking at the price. Sophia's choice to stay inside financing opens the next layer, which is interest rate markup. The lender approves her at a base rate, often called the buy rate. For this deal, that number sits around 4.2%. The dealership presents 5.9%. That difference is margin. Over a 60-month loan on $30,000, that spread generates roughly $1,800 in additional interest. Most buyers accept it because they don't know it exists. Sophia asks a simple question: what's the buy rate? The room shifts. The pace slows. Because now the structure is visible. Once it is visible, it can be negotiated. This is where it breaks. Sophia negotiates the rate down to 4.6%. The dealership still makes money, but less in that layer. Because she has not removed the rest of the system, they shift profit instead of losing it. That shift shows up in places most buyers never look. There are lender kickbacks, payments from lenders to dealerships for sending them loan volume. These are often a few $100s per deal, sometimes more. These payments do not appear in the contract. They're not itemized, but they change how flexible the dealership can be. They add another revenue stream that does not depend on the price of the car. There are manufacturer incentives tied specifically to financing, rebates that only apply if the buyer uses a preferred lender. These can be $500, $1,000, sometimes more. Ryan doesn't qualify, while Sophia does. That difference alone can erase most of Ryan's $1,900 price win without ever appearing as a loss on his side. Same car, different outcome. Then the deal splits again through trade-in manipulation. If a buyer brings a car, the dealership separates the transaction into two parallel negotiations. One is for the new car, one is for the trade-in. Then they move numbers between them to create the appearance of balance. They might overpay on the trade-in and underpay on the new car. Or they do the opposite. The net effect is a hidden spread that can reach $1,000 to $3,000, depending on how aggressively the numbers are adjusted. Ryan avoids this entirely. That feels safe, but it removes another lever where value could have been traded. Sophia keeps the negotiations separate. She tracks both sides. She prevents them from blending. That's the hidden cost. The back end adds another layer. Extended warranties, service contracts, gap coverage, maintenance plans. These are presented as optional protection, but they are also high-margin components. A warranty sold for $2,000 might cost the dealership $800. The rest is profit. Ryan rejects them completely. That feels disciplined, but it removes another place where profit could have been traded for price or rate. Sophia doesn't accept them blindly. She prices them. She negotiates them. She uses them as bargaining chips to move the structure. This is the trap. Inside those products sit insurance margins, especially in gap coverage. Commissions can add hundreds or even over $1,000 depending on the policy. Those commissions are embedded inside what looks like a single-line item. That means the buyer sees protection while the dealership sees layered revenue. There's also service contract resale. The dealership sells a contract and then resells it to a third-party provider. This creates a second profit stream from the same product. It is never visible to the buyer, but it affects how aggressively the dealership can price that product in the first place. That's the part most buyers miss. Processing and documentation fees form another layer. Document preparation, electronic filing, registration handling, administrative processing. Each fee is small, but together they become meaningful. The actual cost is lower than what is charged. That means the difference is margin that sits quietly inside the deal. Ryan assumes these are fixed. Sophia asks which ones can move. Payment structuring becomes the next lever. The dealership shifts focus toward the monthly number. Extend the term and the payment drops. Add products and the payment absorbs them. Adjust the rate and the change feels small. The total cost increases, but the buyer focuses on what feels manageable. Ryan never enters this layer because he removed financing. Sophia separates the variables. Rate, term, principal. She negotiates each one independently. And at this point, most buyers think they understand the deal. They don't. They've only seen the surface. Timing becomes the final visible lever. The dealership controls pace. Approvals take time. Paperwork stretches. Small delays create pressure. Pressure reduces resistance. Buyers who want to finish accept more. Sophia slows the process. Ryan speeds it up. This is where it breaks. By now, both deals look similar on the surface. Same car, similar price, similar experience. Ryan paid in full. Sophia structured the deal. On paper, Ryan still looks ahead. That is exactly how the system is designed to look. The real difference is not visible at the moment of purchase. It is built into the structure, is revealed over time. Same decision, different structure, completely different result. Now here's the part most people miss. The dealership doesn't expect you to know any of this. They expect you to focus on the price. They expect you to say cash. They expect you to simplify the deal. The moment you do that, they don't have to beat you. The system does it for them. And this is why smart people lose money here. Discipline makes you feel in control. But in this system, feeling in control is not the same as having leverage. Paying cash doesn't make you a smart buyer here. It makes you an easy one. And this is the part that affects you directly. None of this shows up in the deal you sign, but all of it shows up in the outcome you live with. By the time Ryan leaves, he can point to the $1,900 he saved. That number is real, but it is not the full picture. The rest of the picture has already been decided inside the structure of the deal. That structure does not reveal itself until after the transaction feels finished. And that is where the real difference begins. Because once the deal feels finished, that's when the system disappears. When it disappears, that's when it becomes the most profitable. Buyers stop asking questions at the exact moment when the remaining layers are still active. They're still adjusting. They're still extracting value in ways that do not appear anywhere in the paperwork they just signed. That shift from visible to invisible is what separates the deal you think you made from the outcome you actually live with. Ryan leaves the dealership with a very clear story in his head. He paid $29,900. He avoided interest. He has no monthly payment. From his perspective, that means the deal is complete, clean, and controlled. There is nothing left to negotiate. There is nothing left to optimize. That sense of completion is exactly what locks his position into place. From that moment forward, his capital is no longer flexible. It is no longer available. It is fully converted into a depreciating asset that will continue losing value regardless of how he paid for it. More importantly, regardless of what else that capital could have been doing during that time. Sophia leaves the same dealership in a completely different position, even though she is driving the exact same car. Her transaction is not finished. It is still connected to multiple systems that continue operating after the contract is signed. Those systems create both cost and opportunity, depending on how she interacts with them over time. That means her outcome is not fixed in the same way Ryan's is, even though on the surface their deals look almost identical. This is where it breaks. 2 weeks after Sophia signs, she receives a notice that her loan has been transferred. For most buyers, that looks routine. It feels almost administrative. But what actually happened is that her loan was just sold into the secondary market. That transaction is one of the most profitable moments in the entire life cycle of the deal. It happens completely outside of the buyer's awareness. It happens completely outside of anything that was discussed during the negotiation. The lender originated her loan at one value. It sold it at a higher value based on its characteristics. The interest rate, the borrower profile, and the structure of the loan determine that value. The difference, typically between 1% and 3% of the loan amount, becomes immediate profit the moment the loan is sold. On a $30,000 loan, that translates to roughly $300 to $900 captured instantly. Sophia was never part of that transaction. They made that money in a transaction you weren't even part of, after the deal you thought was finished. Let that sink in. The system made more money after you signed the deal than during the entire negotiation you thought you controlled. That is not an accident. It is how the system is designed. The real value is not in the car. It is in the structure wrapped around it. Once that structure is created, it can be sold, packaged, and turned into something else entirely. That's the real profit. The critical detail is not just the number. It is what drives it. The higher the interest rate, the more valuable the loan becomes when it is sold. That means there is a built-in incentive to present rates that are slightly higher than necessary, unless the buyer actively pushes back against them. That is exactly why Sophia's question about the buy rate mattered. It reduced not only her visible cost, it also reduced the invisible profit that would have been captured after the deal was done. Ryan never entered this layer. That does not mean he avoided it. It means his deal was structured without it. That forced the system to extract as much value as possible earlier in the layers he could see. There was no value left to capture later. Same car, different outcome. Now shift the frame. This is the part that affects you directly. Not at the dealership, but after you leave. None of this shows up in the deal you sign, but all of it shows up in the outcome you live with. The only way to see it clearly is to break it down across time. Start with year one. Ryan's position is fixed the moment he pays. His $29,900 is gone. The car begins depreciating immediately. It typically loses 15 to 20% of its value in the first year. That means a $30,000 vehicle can drop to around $24,000 to $25,000 within 12 months. That loss happens regardless of whether he paid cash or financed. The difference is what happens to the money he used to buy it. If that same $29,900 had remained invested at a modest 5% return, it would generate roughly $1,500 in that first year. That breaks down to about $125 per month. That number matters. It represents something real that never appears in his decision-making process. Because it does not appear, it is almost always ignored. Sophia's position looks different. Her capital was not fully converted into the car. Even if she invests conservatively, even if she earns just 4%, she generates roughly $1,200 in the first year. Her interest cost, after negotiating the rate down, lands close to that number. That means she is offsetting a large portion of her financing cost with returns she would not have if she paid cash. This is where it breaks. The comparison is no longer interest versus no interest. It becomes interest versus opportunity. Once you see it that way, the entire decision shifts. Ryan eliminated interest, but he also eliminated return. Sophia introduced interest, but she preserved the ability to generate return alongside it. Move to year three. Ryan's opportunity cost compounds. At 5% growth, his initial $29,900 would have reached roughly $34,500. That means he has given up around $4,600 in potential growth. Break that down monthly. It is more than $125 per month that never appeared in his awareness. Meanwhile, the car itself has continued to depreciate. It often reaches 50 to 60% of its original value, depending on usage and conditions. Sophia's position evolves in parallel. Her capital continues to grow. Her loan balance decreases over time. She has the option to pay off the loan early. She is not locked into the full cost of financing. That means she retains control over how much interest she ultimately pays. Same car, different outcome. Move to year 5. Ryan's opportunity cost crosses the $8,000 mark. That number is not theoretical. It is the direct result of converting flexible capital into a fixed asset without preserving any optionality. It never appears on statement. It never appears in a contract, but it is real. Sophia's outcome depends on her decisions after the purchase. If she keeps the loan, she pays more interest. If she pays it early, she reduces that cost significantly. In both cases, her capital has been working during that time. That changes the total result in a way that is not visible at the moment of purchase. That's the hidden cost. And at this point, most buyers think they understand the deal. They don't. They've only seen the surface. What actually determines the outcome is not the number you negotiated. It is the structure you accepted. Once that structure is in place, it continues to operate whether you pay attention to it or not. Same decision, different structure, completely different result. Ryan saw the $1,900 he saved. He didn't see the $1,000 in incentives he lost. He didn't see the rate leverage he removed. He didn't see the back-end flexibility he gave up. He didn't see the $8,000 in opportunity cost building quietly over time. That is why cash feels clean in the moment and expensive in the structure. This is why the same mistake keeps repeating. Most buyers don't lose money because they are careless. They lose money because they negotiate the number they can see while ignoring the structure that controls everything underneath it. That pattern repeats not because people are uninformed. It repeats because the system is designed to keep the most important parts invisible until after the decision is already made. Now you know exactly how this works. Not just the price, not just the interest, the structure. So the next time you walk into a dealership, you won't be negotiating a number. You'll be deciding whether you control the deal or whether the system decides the outcome for you.